I'm going to try and hide,
All right.
excuse me, okay, I'm going to try and hide most of the Zoom stuff here. There we go, I think. If I can, this meeting is being recorded. Okay, there we go.
Okay,
Now
so
I just have to,
the meeting is being recorded as per Blair's request.
yeah. Okay, so we should be good to go there now. So this is the finished image as I processed it. And okay, I thought I should be good to go there now. I have to move something on the screen. Bear with me. Try and find an empty spot on the screen where I can move it to. There we go. So this is the image as I finished processing it. And the software I used was PixInsight. And I'll go through the PixInsight process that I used. I may skip a couple of steps that I've already got done simply because they take a long time to run on my computer. But other than that, they're all run, and I'll mention to everyone what I did here. So I'm going to close this image down, along with all of the other images that were used in making it. If I can make them all go away here. Yes, close that. They're all saved anyway. I think I have a few images open. Okay, I'm going to leave that one there just for the moment. Okay, there we are. So here is the original image, the Cygnus wall. And if I turn on the screen stretch here, there we are. So in looking at this image, there are several things we want to correct. First off is the typical green cast that you get with one-shot color cameras. It's also quite low in contrast itself, as you can see. One sec, I'm just going to open the original image. Bear with me. I think I might have already done something to that one. There we go. There, okay. So if you take a look, it's got a green cast, it's got low contrast, all the usual things, and it's got a little, looks like either under or, yeah, that looks like under correction, from the flash. You'll notice it's slightly darkened in each of the corners. And we'll take care of all of that as well. So the very first thing we're going to want to do with this image is to run Blur Exterminator. Now I use RC plugins in my processing. You don't have to, but for those that don't have them, they are well worth the price. They make deconvolution and noise reduction quite easy compared to doing it the old-fashioned way. So the very first thing we're going to do is to deconvolve this image, and I'm going to use Blur Exterminator for it. The settings I'm going to use are pretty straightforward. I usually reduce the star halos. You don't have to. That's entirely a personal option. Some people like bigger stars. I tend to like smaller stars. And you do that just by setting this slider. The further negative you make the number, the smaller it will make the stars. It will reduce the halo size on the stars. By clicking automatic PSF, the package will find the point spread function on its own. And the nice part about that is it can vary it across the image. So if you've got stars that are streaked in the corners due to pincushion distortion, it will correct for all of that. So it's really nice in that case. Even if you've got tilt in your optical plane, it will take some of that out. I've never tried removing tilt with it, simply because my camera's not got any tilt. I've adjusted it out mechanically. You can select how much you want to sharpen the image, and all this really is a blend. So if I set it to 50%, it will be 50% of the original image and 50% of the sharpened image combined. I generally select a value of 1, which is the completely sharpened image. Again, entirely up to the person doing the processing. So I'm going to turn this loose, and it will take a couple of minutes to run. And while it's running, do any of you folks use RC Astro's tools?
Yeah, I do. All the time.
Yeah, he's got an excellent grouping of tools. The only one I'm not using, I think, is Star Exterminator, just because I find reasonable results with StarNet++. So this is going to crunch for a little bit. This will be the boring part of the presentation. And as it's crunching. So what it will do if of course I can't zoom in on the image now because it's running. But what it will do, the stars will become noticeably smaller and sharper. And the nebula itself will tend to stand out a little more after this is done. The video card on the computer I'm using for the image processing, unfortunately, is not supported for the AI processing. So as a result, it's got to use all 20 cores on the processor and just crunch through it. It's about a quarter of the way through now. So just bear with me a few minutes, or bear with my computer a few minutes, I should say. It is important, by the way, to make deconvolution the first step in your processing. The reason for that is that anything you do, if you stretch an image or if you noise reduce an image, you change the point spread function. And deconvolution relies on having an accurate point spread function. So typically the first thing I do is I will run deconvolution to sharpen the image. There are other things we'll do to sharpen the image as we go through the process, but very first thing is to run deconvolution before you do anything else and destroy an accurate point spread function as read from the stars. I'll ask the question as I'm talking here. Does everyone know what I mean when I say a point spread function?
Mhm.
Okay, good. I don't have to explain that then. We're about halfway through now. It's a little like watching grass grow. I apologize. When we
It's
get
green.
what's that?
It's green.
That beats my lawn at the moment. We haven't had a lot of
Yeah.
rain here, and we just had a bunch of landscaping done. So we have grass that's beginning to grow and sort of stalled at that point. Hopefully we get rain in the next couple of days. We're supposed to.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. You'll hear us mention fires and smoke from time to time, Derek. The western provinces in Canada are in the middle of their forest fire season, and there's a
Yeah.
couple of rather large forest fires going on. And they're putting enough smoke out that it's covering a large chunk of North America. It sort of runs along along the border between Canada and the U.S., dips down into the U.S., comes up over Maine, and then over the province that we're in, Nova Scotia, and then out over the Atlantic.
I know that there are
Called the
teams
jet stream.
of South African firefighters that have actually gone over to Canada the last couple of years to
Yeah,
assist.
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
Uh, and
Yeah,
that's it's totally our non-fire season while it's
yeah,
your season.
yeah, we do the same. We have from time to time firefighters going down to the U.S., firefighters going over to several other continents to help out in time of need. It's one of those things that people actually do a good job on. So there we go. The deconvolution is run, and right away you'll notice all of the stars are substantially smaller. I should be able to toggle back and forth here so you can see the difference.
Yep.
And the nebula itself, if all went well. If I can find a spot that has detail that you can see through the green that's in there. So if you look, the nebula, you notice how blurry it is now compared to now.
Huge difference.
So it's done. Oh yeah, and it's done an excellent job on. You'll notice. I'm assuming everyone can see my mouse as I move it around. It's
Yeah.
in the center of the image there now. You'll notice the stars are slightly elongated due to a little tracking error, and the deconvolution removes that entirely. So what it does is it effectively looks at the star, since the star is a measure of the point spread function, and and then it goes through the image in an iterative process. I won't bother going through the math. That was my day job for the longest time. It effectively compensates or tries to reverse the convolution, which in this case is the blurring, that happened as the light traveled through the channel from the star to your camera. So it does a pretty good job, as you can see. It's reduced the star size, it's removed the trailing, and it sharpened up the nebula quite a bit. Now I'm going to zoom back out. Now I'm going to show you something that I discovered last night. And I'm going to take this image and we're going to look at its histogram. Where are we? Generalized hyperbolic stretch. Here we go. And we're going to zoom in a bit as soon as this moves over. The wonders of a slow connection. There we go. So if we zoom out and then zoom in here and find wherever that went. Okay, let's just go to a log display. You'll notice on the log display that there are a lot of lines in this histogram. And there are a lot of empty spots, if you will, in the individual channels. So there's lots of green energy here, but there's nothing again until over here. And it's caused by a little bit of a problem with flat fielding. And it's also caused by the one-shot color camera having this green cast. Now, when we do color calibration, it will remove that, but it won't remove those gaps in the brightness levels. There is a package, however, that does a wonderful job on removing that. And again, this is going to take a couple of seconds to run, a couple of minutes, I should say, to run. And it's any of the background tools for fixing up the background gradients. In particular, I'm going to use Graxpert here, which is a freeware AI-based tool for removing gradients in the image, but it's also been trained to remove errors in flat fielding, at least certain errors. So you'll notice again, the corners here are darker than the rest of the image. So after we run this gradient reduction tool, and I know Bob uses a different one. And I've used the one Bob uses. It works quite well. It's automatic DBE, if I remember right.
Yep.
And it's from SETI Astro, and it does a good job as well.
And it's also
So
free.
once this runs, exactly. So the nice part about running the gradient reduction here is that it's going to remove most of the green cast. It's going to remove the dark corners, and it's going to restore the histogram a fair amount. So you can see the difference. Here is the image after Graxpert has run. You'll notice that the corners are no longer dark. The green cast that was in the image is gone. Okay, once that goes away. And now if we take a look at the histogram, oops, wrong tool, sorry. It should be substantially improved. It's not perfect, but it should be substantially better. Come on, get over here. So you can see there are still lines, but if we look at okay, I want the brightness here, bear with me. Lightness. So you can see here's the lightness, this line, and you notice that it is now Doesn't have all of the dips that the previous one had. It's fairly consistent all the way across. So running the gradient removal fixed a chunk of the problems. Not all of them, but a fair chunk. So now the next thing we're going to want to do is to color calibrate this image. So what I'm doing is I've removed the gradient, but in doing so, it's reduced the green illumination. And what that's done, if I zoom in enough, there, can everyone see the noise that's in that image now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happened is as I've removed some of the green background, some of the noise in the other channels is starting to show through. So we're going to fix that eventually, but for now, we also now have to color calibrate this image. It's not that far off right now, but we will calibrate it. So first thing we have to do in PixInsight is solve the image. So we plate solve the image. This happens to be from a run I did last night, so it should work. Let's see what happens. So it's detecting stars now. Now it'll go out to the database and it's looking to find the stars in the database. It'll match them up and then it will attempt to correct the color of all the stars to match the database. And it's done that now. It took 5 iterations and we now have a color calibrated image that has had the gradient removed and has been sharpened. That is...
Blair, when
Yeah.
the first time I tried that, it had to be image solved before you can do that.
It does, and I've image solved it. That's what we just did.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, now we're going to color calibrate it. Sorry. I got a step ahead of myself. You are correct, Bob.
So
now
Blair,
that we-
Jeff Lewis here. Sorry, I joined late. Yeah,
That's all right, Jeff.
I had the same problem. I didn't know what. Well, you said what camera you had and scope, but I ran it through Astronomy Net to find out what the actual center of the image was, and that because I couldn't use the plate solver in PixInsight without that info.
This one ran through on the first pass for me.
What,
The
on
one-
PixInsight?
Yes. We just ran it. That's what just ran there, Jeff.
Okay, so maybe you know what your image scale is, so
Well,
that's probably set as a default. Mine is completely different to yours, and it just
Yeah,
won't work.
I do know the image scale, and I did have it in there, but I did not have it in there when I solved it last
Okay.
night. And again, it's solved in the first pass.
Okay,
What you have to do, however, I'm going to pull that dialog back up. I won't run it again, but
Yeah.
I'll just give you an idea of some of the things that can go wrong. So what you have to do, the coordinates in this dialog have to be in the image.
yeah,
They do not have to be the image center,
yeah,
but they do have to be in the image. I generally try and get close to the center. It will work if it's not perfectly centered, but the closer the better. The next thing is if you're having trouble, change the catalog that you're comparing against. So you can go to an online catalog and you can select any of these, and I would try each of them. Tycho 2 generally works.
okay,
I had automatic catalog selected for this.
that's what I generally
Yeah.
use.
But generally speaking, you can, if you're having difficulty, oh, sorry, I have the hiccups. If you're having difficulty, you can select any of the other catalogs here. And usually Tycho 2 or Gaia DR2 tend to work quite well.
Okay,
The
Thank
final thing to check is, and it depends, oops, I didn't mean to close that down, I apologize. The final thing to check is when you run it, if it says it didn't get any star matches, you can go over to the advanced parameters and you can apply some noise reduction.
okay, never been in there.
Yeah, you can apply some noise reduction. You can change the detection scales. By tweaking these settings, you can almost always get it to work. As to what those settings mean, just read the mouse over and it'll tell you a pretty good answer.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, sometimes I get images and it takes me a while to be able to plate solve it. It's just a lot of fiddling with the various settings, but I haven't had it fail yet. Now that we have plate solved, now I can go through and color calibrate. So let's see, we'll use spectrophotometric color calibration. And this happens to be the camera that was used, which works out quite well. So it's a 571 chip, and it's the Sony UV IR cut
IR
filters.
cut.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there we go. So just click apply. And what it will do now, it's going to go through, find the stars, match them to the database. Since it's been plate solved, it can do that fairly easily. And then it will tweak the colors across to make all of the stars match the database. Generally speaking, you want to do that after you tweak the background with whether it's dynamic background extraction or GradX or whatever application you're using to remove gradients. You generally want to do color calibration after that. Now we have to, bear with me, just tell it to run that. And now we have an image. A noisy image, but an image. Bring that over here. So again, color calibration and gradient removal have removed some of the data from some of the channels. What that has done is it has made the image, if I zoom in, can everyone see that noise in there? I'll zoom in one more level. Is the noise coming across Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happened here is by removing a large part of the green color cast and tweaking the colors, you make noise that was in the image more visible. So the last thing we want to do now in our, I'm going to use a little bit of PixInsight speak here, although I hate it. Well, the image is in linear form. That just means no nonlinear stretch has been applied to the image. We're going to reduce this noise. Now, it takes a while with the settings that I use, so I'm not going to run it. I'm just going to pull the image up that I have, which is already corrected, but I will show you what I have done. I've used noise reduction. I've used noise exterminator with these settings. So I take the intensity and I take about 96% of the noise out of the intensity. Again, to taste. If you do it and it still looks a little noisy, take a little more out. I usually take all of the color noise out because color noise is really obvious in an image. The human eye picks it up quite easily, so I tend to try and remove as much of that as I can. And I generally do it in multiple iterations. And if you can read what's up there, basically to remove the noise, what it will do is it will work at slightly smaller noise reductions and iterate and remove more and more noise on each iteration. It runs slower that way, but it does a better job. You can do it with one pass, one iteration, and it will work. It just won't preserve quite as much detail. So I'm going to give you an idea. I have saved an image having done all of those steps. Now I just have to find it here. Bear with me. Should be an image called linear. There we are. Oh, it was already there. Sorry. So here is the same image with the same processing that's been applied to this one. All I've done is I've done a pass of noise exterminator on the image, and I want to show you the difference. I'm going to zoom in on approximately the same spot in the image, 2 to 1, and we'll take this down to about here. Now, one sec. It's easier to line it up exactly this way. So now take a look at the difference. This will show you how well Noise Exterminator is at taking high frequency noise out of an image. Look at the difference between the two.
Amazing.
This is Russ Croman's noise exterminator, yeah?
Yes, it
Yes.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an excellent package for noise removal.
Yeah, I've got that, but
Basically,
mine looks different to
Okay.
yours, the Windows. So maybe I've got an older version.
Oh, no, all that's wrong. No, it's not wrong. All that's different, and I can show you that, noise reduction.
AI.
Select the AI, and you want AI 3.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Didn't know that.
If you're using AI 2, you don't get these sliders. It only does
That's
one.
right. I'm going to say you threw me. Yeah.
Yeah. So just click Select AI and haul up AI 3.
Okay.
And you can see the improvements it's made in the image. It's phenomenal what this tool does. You can get similar results using some of the built-in tools, but it will drive you crazy trying to get there, and it will take forever. This, you just click it, go away and have a cup of coffee, and when you come back, it's done. And if you have a supported video card for the AI engine, it'll be done in seconds. As I said, my card is not supported, so it does take a little while. But look at the difference. It's just, there's no high frequency noise in the image at all, as you can see. Yeah. There is some low frequency or mid frequency noise. Mid scale noise is probably a better term. And we'll look at how to take that out here in a little bit. So I'm going to close these other images. And we're going to work now with this image, which has just been what PixInsight terms as linearly processed. I have done no stretches to this image as of yet. Next up on the list is to remove the stars from this image. So there are a variety of ways of doing that. The one that I use is StarNet. And just bear with me a second. Process. So StarNet 2, you just set it up for linear data, you click that and go away and have a cup of coffee. Again, I've stored the results of that, so I'm just going to open it up rather than let it crunch and take 5 minutes of time here. It gets pretty bad when you worry about taking an extra 5 minutes, given how slow computers, or how fast computers are these days.
Have you compared that, Blair, to Russ's StarX?
I have not used Russ's StarX simply because this one works and it's free.
Okay, cool.
It does require.
I use it.
I use StarX. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too.
It does require, however, that you. I'll just open it up here. Here we go. Here's the starless version.
Yeah.
Of that data. It does require, however, that you, there we are, that you subtract this image from this image to get the star-only data.
Yeah.
And again, I've already done that, but we'll do that in pixel math here just to show everyone how it works. So it's basically, I'm going to change the name of this image to N, simply because I hate typing long names. And I'm going to change the name of this image. Actually, I'll leave this one. I'll just duplicate it. So we're going to say pixel math. And I'll just reset that, clear it. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take the original image, which is this one. We're going to subtract the nebula image from it, which is this one. And I'm going to create a new image. And then we should have stars only. And we'll just let it do a, that's interesting. Wait a minute.
It's still linear.
It is, but, oh, I know what's wrong. I had done processing to this. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to run it again here. Okay. Sorry, all processes, StarNet will duplicate this guy. And we will turn it loose, and this will take just a minute, or a couple of minutes. So what it's going to do is basically go through, it will remove all of the stars from the image. When it's done, I will then subtract, okay, now my mouse won't work, there we go. I will subtract this image from the original and get a just the stars image. One nice thing about Star Exterminator is it does that for you. It produces both images automatically.
In that StarNet thing there, I see there's a create star mask. Would that not give you your stars as well? Is that not?
No, that doesn't give you your stars. That gives you a mask that you can use to work on the stars.
Okay, all right.
So it'll be a monochrome image.
Okay.
Oh, this is running faster than I thought it would.
Well trained.
Or
Is the idea of separating the stars from the nebula so you can like push the nebula without pushing the stars and then recombine them later? Is that what you're doing?
To a large extent, yes, but equally important, I can process them differently. So I can crank up the saturation on the stars, and if I had done that on the nebula, it would look really crappy.
Okay.
So I can make nice, colorful stars. My stars in my processing will remain small. I like small, tight stars. Some people don't. It's entirely up to you how you do it. But since I like small stars, I can stretch the stars by a different amount than I stretch the nebula, and then bring them back together and maintain those nice small stars. So here we are here. Here is my, bring this over here. There we go. Here is my nebula only image. You will notice there are a couple of artifacts left from some of the brighter stars. I would normally clone those out. I'm not going to do that tonight simply because it takes way too much time. So now we're going to subtract this one, which I'm going to change the name of to be N, so I don't have to type in long file names, and we'll just subtract the two. So original O, which is this one, you can see it's been called O, minus N, and I'm going to create a new image which will be just the stars. There we go. And now if I turn on the screen stretch for this thing, and I wait for, bear with me, I moved my mouse too high, and now I have to wait for, there it is, for the zoom panel to go away. So now you can see if we do this, here's all the stars in the image, as you can see. Right, so it's taken them all out. Now, what we're going to do, after I move that over there, and it catches up to me. Okay, so now we're going to go to this image, the nebula image, and we want to vastly improve what that looks like. And I'm going to use my favorite stretch tool in PixInsight. It's GHS for those that have not used it. It was developed by a Canadian on the West Coast. When Dave developed it, he got another gentleman, and I forget where he lives, to code it up for him. And it was originally released as a script, and it's now a process in PixInsight, and it works quite well. It has the flexibility that I'm used to in Images Plus in the ArcSign stretch. And it's the first stretch in PixInsight that I've really found useful. The histogram stretch that PixInsight comes with works. It's just a bit of a pain in the butt to use. This one is much more intuitive and easy to use is the best way to put it. So here is my nebula only image. I'm going to click this, and I got to take log off. There we go. So you notice there's nothing visible now. No, I moved my mouse too high, and now I'm waiting for the zoom bar to go away. There we go. Here's the screen stretch, so you can see all of the data. Now what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in on this histogram. So here are the color channels, red, green, and blue, as you can see. I don't generally do my first stretch in RGB mode, which is right here. You can select the mode. My first stretch and all my star stretches, I use color because now I get control over the amount of color that I leave in the image. So I'm going to turn on the preview here. And what we're going to do is, I'll walk you through how this works. We're going to select what's called the symmetry point. By the way, GHS is a free download for those that don't have it. We're going to select a symmetry point. The symmetry point you select is very dependent upon the image, but generally speaking, it's near the peak or slightly to the right of the peak. Rarely to the left. The only time you would go to the left of the peak is if there was a lot of data in these dark areas that you wanted to keep. So I'm going to take basically the peak of the image right here, the histogram peak, and I'll click on it and I'll click send to symmetry point. And I'm pointing at my screen, which isn't going to do you any good. That is going to transfer the value, this value of the histogram, down to this symmetry point dialog box here, or text box. You can see it filled in with 0.000864. You can also select the value by clicking in the image here. So for instance, I can click here. Now you notice it moved to there. I can click here and it will move around depending upon where you're clicking. The spot that I chose, it hasn't changed here, so that's good. You have to click that button to change it. So you can click around, you can go here, you can go to a point about here. That's getting pretty close to the brightness value that I keyed in, as you can see. So that level right there is the symmetry point in my image, or will be the symmetry point, I should say. Now, the next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to click this back here so you can see what's going to happen. There we go. As we change the scale factor, the other thing I'm going to do is turn off the screen stretch. There we go. So as I stretch this image and we move it up a lot, you can see in the preview window over here that we actually get a very nice result. And if I now, bear with me a second, do that, you'll notice that this actually looks pretty good. Now we have this local, there's something I turned off here. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So if we now take a look at, here's the curve that's being produced as I do that. Now the symmetry point is where the curve goes through, if it's an S curve, it's the sort of steepest part of the curve. So if you can think anything above the symmetry point is brightened more than things below the symmetry point. So as you can see, this has actually done a reasonable stretch so far. Now we can play with the local intensity, which changes the slope of that line. So you can see what's happened is it raising and lowering that slope as we play with it a bit. Generally speaking, I will take that a little bit positive. And you can see what's happening is it's increasing the contrast in the image slightly. If you have highlights in the image that are clipping, you can protect those with the highlights slider here, protect highlights. And if you have a black point in the image or data in the image that is very dim and it's being dropped to black, i.e. clipping the low end, you can protect that with this slider. You can see what it does. It changes the shape of the curve either at the high end or the low end, to protect the highlights or the low shadow area of the image. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention, and I know I mentioned that I use color mode, you'll notice this slider. If when I stretch the image, I get saturation clipping. Now it's not quite clipped here, but it is close. So what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in on that and have a good look. You notice how that's just getting close to clipping the saturation. You can dial that back with this slider. There, now it's not clipped.
Mm.
And you have control over it that you would not have if you set it up in RGB mode. So if you take a look, there it is, almost clipped. Can everyone see what I'm talking about there? How that
Yeah.
red has become, really clipped in red. And now I can dial that back a little bit, and now it's not clipped.
Yeah, can I just
Does
ask, what's the difference between the RGB mode and the color mode?
You don't have the ability to use this slider in RGB mode.
Okay.
You're stuck with whatever you've got. What this is doing the stretch in the, okay, I know I'll get it wrong, HLV space, and so you're enhancing the color as you stretch the image, which is quite nice. It's the equivalent of, if you use a curve, I think I can pull curves up here. Curve transformation. It's the equivalent of using a curve and clicking on C to stretch the color. And you can see the result, right? We don't have color clipping here. The image itself is looking pretty good. It's not perfect yet. Now, the next thing we're going to do with this is we'll brighten it up just a little bit more, I think. Okay. And the HA curtain behind the wall is a little flat. And that's mostly because you have to remember this is the bottom end of the North American nebula. So there's no real sky background in this image. It's all nebula. We may not want to make that quite that flat. And it's entirely up to you as you're processing it. But you fix that with the symmetry point. You can move this symmetry point right or left using this fine-tuning slider here. Don't shift this value, which was the original symmetry point you selected. There's nothing wrong with shifting it later in the processing, but if you shift it now, the sensitivity on this slider is such that the tiniest of motions will just drag it right out of the histogram. This is a fine adjustment down here, and you can select which of these, whether it's the stretch factor, local intensity, symmetry point, whatever, which of those you're going to fine adjust just by clicking the down arrow. We are, of course, going to adjust the symmetry point. And if you click this off, it's a medium scale adjustment now, and it may still be too much. Let me just see. Yeah, it is. Okay, so if we instead use the fine tuning and adjust this back to where it was. Okay, so here's where we started off. You'll notice this little caret on the histogram is what's moving. So we're going to just take this slightly to the right to get a little more contrast. So you can see we've darkened some of the other areas of the image. And then we'll click OK to apply that. In Pix Insight, this does take a little getting used to. It's not a standard Windows interface. It's cross-platform, so it's not a Mac interface, it's not a Windows interface, it's not a Linux interface. It's an interface that they use that is common to all of those packages. And so this is the apply button. I can also drag this little square, new instance, to the image and have it stretch that way as well. So here's the image before any stretch has been applied. You can see it's pretty dark. Now we'll just apply that to the image. And here is our now non-linearly stretched image. Yeah, let me pull that over so the whole image is visible. Can everyone see that there okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in on that a bit. And you'll notice that there is some noise that has come up in the image. It's a medium, sort of mid-scale noise. It's not too bad, and I'm cheating a little bit because I played with this image last night to get the best stretch I could to minimize that noise. So I had some idea of where I wanted to pop that symmetry point. A little bit of trial and error comes in handy. If this noise were stretched too much and it was objectionable, you just click back and do it again. But you can see we've now got a reasonable image. But one of the things that we want to do is bring out a little more color in this image. And we want to bring out the color, but in particular, I'm going to make a rash statement here. I am making the assumption that everybody here is interested in making pretty pictures as opposed to scientific imaging. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. I like that answer. PixInsight doesn't like that answer. So one of the things that I want to do with this image to make it what I consider to be a pretty image, I want to dial up the red in the wall here more than I dial up the red in everything else. And the way I'm going to do that, PixInsight has really just one masking tool, and it does not work that well. They have a tool, mask generation, called range selection. And with this, I can set sort of the lower level of the mask. I'm going to turn screening on so it makes it a little easier to see it. Right, and I can set the upper level of the mask so you can see the effect. But it's really limited. I'm not able to really precisely isolate the area I want to dial the red up with. And I'm used to Images Plus masking tools, which are phenomenal for doing that. I can draw a mask. Now, to the rescue is SETI Astro. It is a bunch of scripts in PixInsight, and it is well worth downloading. Again, they're free. One in particular is called FAME. And it's an acronym, and here it is, Freehand Adaptive Mask Editor. What it lets you do is it lets you draw a mask.
Oh, wow.
So finally, PixInsight has the ability to draw a mask. So you zoom out until you see the area you want to mask. You can do it with a brush, what's called a spray can. It has an ellipsoidal shape for doing galaxies if you don't want to freehand draw. I generally use the freehand shape. And to draw the mask, you hold down the Shift key, and then you click with your mouse and hold the mouse button down, and then just draw around the area you want the mask to cover. And you can see the effect. So if you say, I want to draw here, you'll see that little green line that's showing up. That is where the mask will be. And I'm just going to come down sort of to here. I'll take out that area and that area. Oops, you do not have to be perfect because we're going to blur the mask, of course, before we do anything. And again, I'm just drawing a mask to highlight the area that I want to increase in color, or to up the saturation on the red. And again, I'm doing this just because I like it to be a little redder in this area. There we go. And now this blur amount will blur this mask as it's produced. So I'm just going to dial that blur up a little bit to somewhere near, say, 40. Click Execute. By the way, if you don't like the shape you drew, you just click that and it gets rid of it. You can draw multiple shapes and connect them. It's quite flexible. So now you click Execute, and what you've got is now a blurred mask, as you can see. So finally, there is a tool, for those that weren't familiar with it, in PixInsight that will let you draw a decent mask. You no longer have to use pixel math. I actually used to go out to Images Plus to make my masks before this tool. To apply a mask to an image, you just drag from here over to the image, same column. Now we have applied that mask, as you can see. And what we're going to do, we're going to leave the mask active in the image. By the way, you can invert the mask should you want to. But I'm going to turn Show Mask off so I see the image. And then we're going to go back to GHS. I'm going to clear it by clicking this. It resets it back to defaults. And what we're going to do now, we're going to go to saturation mode or color mode. We'll try color first just to see what it looks like. And I'm going to stretch it a little bit. Oops, I better turn on the screen preview so we can see what I'm doing. And you can see that's kind of, yeah. So we won't use color, we will use saturation. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just ever so slightly going to increase the saturation in the area covered by the mask. And oops, that's a little too much, I think. And you want to be very gentle doing this so you can see the difference. If I click that versus there's no adjustment, there's that saturation adjustment. Can everyone see the difference there?
Yeah, can I just check there's no symmetry point being selected for this?
No, the symmetry point is 0 for this.
Okay.
But hopefully, can everyone see the difference
between it's really good.
that and that? Okay, so what I've done, I have increased the saturation just of this area. And we'll click OK. Actually, I'm going to reduce the saturation still a little more, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. There. So now it should just barely be visible. There we are. The reason I did that is now I'm going to up the saturation of the whole image. So that will up that as well, and I didn't want to make it oversaturated. So we'll click OK. There we are. Now we're going to reset it. I'm going to remove the mask. Remove the mask. Pull the preview window back up. Now I've reset this. We're going to go to saturation mode again. And I'm just going to slightly increase now the saturation of the whole image, just to bring the saturation up in the background. But I want to keep this nice saturation difference here between the wall and the background. And you do that by upping the saturation on the whole image now that you've already adjusted this area. Thus, I had to take the mask off. So now we'll up that a little bit. About there. How's that look to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll click OK. There we are, and I'll get rid of that, and we'll go and look at the image. So now here is my nebula only image so far. One of the things you will notice if I zoom in is, see this mid-frequency noise in these areas? Can everyone see that, the little blobs that are there? Okay, we really want to fix that up a bit. And any noise reduction that you do is going to slightly blur the image. So there's actually some nice detail in this area of the image that you do not want to blur. So we're going to put this mask back on, but what I'm going to do is invert it.
Yeah.
So mask, invert the mask, and when I show the mask, you'll see the effect. So now you can see this area where you can see data is going to be affected by what we're going to do. This area that has all that nice detail that I don't want to lose will have nothing done to it because it's masked out. The mask has been blurred. We could blur it some more. I'm not going to get carried away with that in this session. But generally speaking, you would play around with that to get it to look the play around with the blur applied to the mask, and you just use a convolution for that to blend what you're about to do a little bit better. We'll go with it just as is for now, just to make life easy. So what we're going to do is we are going to, I'm going to do two things here. So I can bring this up. We're going to use, there are a variety of ways of doing this. I'm going to use the multi-scale linear transform. And, oh, convenient, it even has the right settings from what I did last night. Let's get rid of those so I can show everyone how I arrived at those. Here's the default settings. It brings up 4 layers of image scale plus the residual, which is the sum of everything else. And I'm going to turn the mask. The mask is still there. I'm just not going to show it so that we can see the effect. So what we're going to do, generally speaking, when I'm trying to get rid of noise, I want to take usually somewhere around 8 layers of 8 wavelet layers in this image. So think of it as 8 layers of resolution, if you will. And you leave it linear interpolation on. Starlit transform is fine, and diactic, excuse me, as opposed to linear selected here. Generally, I take 8 layers. Sometimes you want more, sometimes you want less, but generally speaking, 8 is usually pretty good. Now, what you want to do, you click on the preview button, and after it calculates a transform, and this is annoying because I'm remote desktoped in, you'll notice my cursor is changed. It's not actually busy, it's just the cursor being a pain. We're going to zoom in on this area here. And let me see if I can fix that cursor problem. Sometimes this does it. It doesn't look like it. Okay. Anyway, so you can see some of that noise that's in there now. Now watch what happens. If we come up here and I turn a layer off. So I'm going to start with about the 4th layer and I'm going to turn it off. Everybody notice how that very slightly blurred the background in that image?
Yeah.
I'll turn it back on. You see the difference?
Yeah,
I have to ask because sometimes Zoom. What's that?
I'm not sure I can. I don't
well.
know if that's compression coming over Zoom. I don't know.
That's why I keep asking the question. Sometimes Zoom won't show the obvious that I'm seeing on my screen. So here it is, slightly blurred. Now I'm going to turn it off. And I'll turn it back on. Can you see the difference?
Yeah, pretty subtle.
It is. So, but because you can see a difference, and you notice the sharp line here wasn't really affected much, that means this is one of the layers that I want to adjust. So we're going to turn that layer back on, and I'm going to select noise reduction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up the amount of noise reduction that I'm applying. Now, we should be able to see that. You see the difference? That versus...
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, that's a little...
Shift.
What's that?
I could see the shift this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little too much reduction because that's going to produce a very blurry background. Because remember, there are other layers we want to take down yet. So we're just going to we're going to leave the threshold setting and turn the amount of reduction down. So it keeps the same, it's a poor way of thinking of it, but it keeps the same blur, and it just, this is the percentage of that blur it uses, 61%.
Yeah.
So I've just turned it down to some value. It's totally done by eye. Now we're going to take a look and we're going to go after another layer. So let's go down to layer 3. And again, just to see if layer 3 does anything, we'll turn it off and see what difference happens. Not a lot.
Can I ask, Blair,
Yeah.
when you go from 4 to 3 to 2 or 4 to 5 to 6, I'm guessing the size of the I don't know, it's a PSF but the size of the block that you're affecting changes. Is that,
that is correct. The bigger the layer number, the bigger the block.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah. So by affecting layer 3, you'll notice it didn't do a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Very, very slight. So let's leave 3 alone for the moment and go up to 5. And again, you just turn the layer on and off. You can see 5 took down virtually all of the remaining noise. It actually took down too much, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to adjust layer 5. We're going to select noise reduction. We're going to reduce it less than we did with this one. So this had a value of 20. The threshold here will be less than 20. And then we'll reduce the amount of that that's applied. And again, we're just looking visually until we get something that looks... we wait till it catches up. Let me see what that looks like. Everybody see that difference?
Yeah.
Right, so what we've done now, we have taken down a lot of that background noise. Now, we do have a little tiny bit of high frequency noise. You can see it in this area.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, we'll go to the next layer down, and we'll take that down a little tiny bit. And we'll reduce the amount. That's not looking too bad. So here's the result. That versus that.
Yeah.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. Now, it may have been overdone, but we're going to start there. The reason I say may have been overdone is when you add the stars back in, there will be a value, a constant that ends up being added to this area, and it may make the blur a little more effective. So we may want to back off on the blur a bit, but you won't know till you add the stars back in. So at any rate, you can see the difference. The other thing you can see, you notice this area of the nebula that had all that detail in it, it doesn't look any different because the mask is protecting it. So let's just zoom out to the whole image now, once it catches up, just to make sure we haven't killed any other part of the image. And I think we have. Yeah, we took out a little too much detail sort of in this area. So we're going to want to back off some of the blur that I've added. And we'll just look at that area as we do it. Again, this is very much visual and trial and error. So I'm going to make the assumption that it is that one, and I'm not going to change the threshold. I'm going to change the amount. Maybe about there. And I think I'll take this amount down a little bit as well. Now I got a little more detail in there. So let's look at the overall image now. And we wait for it to catch up. That doesn't look too bad now. So we've got that. If we zoom in on this area again, versus that. That doesn't look too bad. We'll start with that and see how it goes. So now you click apply to apply that to the actual image, and then we wait for it to crunch. That was fast. And here is our now noise reduced image where the background has been noise reduced. The nebula has not yet been noise reduced. We're not going to use that tool to reduce the nebula that's got all the detail in it. Sorry, I keep saying nebula, I mean the wall. So what we're going to do for the wall, we're going to leave that mask on, but we're going to get rid of the invert. So now what we do, whatever we do, will be applied to the wall area. By the way, I am making an assumption that everyone is familiar with what masks do and how they work. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes, for me.
Yep.
Okay, good. So now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to use another noise reduction tool to try and improve the little bit of noise that's in this brighter nebula area. And the tool I happen to like is a tool that's native to PixInsight called TGV denoise. And I'm going to try it at its default settings first to see if I like them. You can increase the strength of the noise reduction with this slider. You can increase how much noise reduction is done with the smoothness slider. And you can increase or decrease how much edge protection the tool applies with this slider. And again, you can see whether you want to make them higher or lower just by reading the mouse over. So we're going to start with the default and see what it does. So now we're running. If I remember right, the default worked pretty well, so I'm just going to try that. I usually try the default as my first pass, and if that doesn't work, I tweak from there.
100 iterations.
What's that?
Iterations is set to 100.
Yeah.
Iterations.
Is that default?
Yes. Yeah, that's the default. It doesn't take very long. It's doing each channel now, and it's just doing 100 iterations on each channel. And there we go. That didn't look too bad. So we haven't lost a whole lot of detail. We can click forward and backward here. So it's very subtle with the default settings, but look carefully in this area. There's no noise reduction. There's the noise reduction. You see the difference? And it does a pretty good job at preserving the detail in here. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to leave that mask in place. I only want to do it to the nice detailed area here. I'm going to use something called local histogram equalization, just to increase the contrast slightly. But I don't want to do it to the whole image. I don't want to bring up any noise that's in this area. I'm going to leave that alone. I just want to bring up the contrast a bit in this area. So I'll leave the mask in place. I don't think I have, yeah, it's not inverted, good. So here's the local histogram tool. I generally, its default values, by the way, is a 64 pixel kernel radius. I generally increase that. And what it does, the best way to describe it, although it's not quite numerically correct, larger values here tend to affect larger image scales. It's not a one-to-one thing though. So I generally take this up. If we go to the value I had already determined, somewhere around 140-ish, we'll turn on the preview window. Now, that's way too strong. You notice what's happened here?
Yep.
Right? All we do is now we'll turn down the amount of that that's applied. Somewhere around, let's say there. And then if we flip back and forth, you can readily see the difference.
Yeah.
Right? So now we've increased the local contrast in this area by using that mask. We're going to leave the mask in place, and now what I'm going to do is I'm ever so slightly going to sharpen that area. And the tool I generally like to use for that is, under convolution, an unsharp mask.
Okay.
Now, this one, there is a bit of a one-to-one correlation. If you change the standard deviation higher, it will act at higher dimensional scales. So what we're going to do, we're going to start again with the defaults. Now, one thing I have found, by the way, is that the preview does not work well in this tool, and I do not know why. It's a question I've launched to the folks at PixInsight. We'll see what comes back. So here is the image, and we're going to just turn off. It doesn't even show up. Look at that. if we turn this up, it's not even showing up in the preview. I have no idea why it doesn't work in the preview. So what I generally end up doing is I zoom in on the image and I just try different values. So if we now apply this, didn't do a lot, so we'll click that back and we'll increase the standard deviation a bit. Now, I'm pretty sure that's too much, but let's just see what happens. See if it works in the preview now. Oh yeah, that worked. Everybody see that difference? It's very subtle. And you can, now that I've made it work at the scale that I want here, and it's just trial and error, just move around the standard deviation level, then you adjust the amount. So if I go too far, you'll see that's kind of yucky, right? But I can now adjust that to get the effect that I want. Looks like somewhere around there. There, can you see the difference?
Yeah.
There it is on, there it is off. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll apply that now to the image as a whole. Get rid of the preview. And here is now our nebula image. It's almost finished. The next thing we want to do, we want to set the white point and black point for this image. And what we're going to do, I got to get rid of the mask before I do. Remove the mask. Again, we're going to use GHS for setting the black point, and I'll show you why in a minute. I'm going to show you two tools here. Here's the general tool used by PixInsight for any kind of, it's sort of go-to stretch tool, the histogram transformation. If we select N, which is the nebula image, here after the stretch, if you want to set the black point, you would normally slide this along. The difficulty with this is you will notice that if I slide it too far, I clip the black point. You see what happened there? See how the histogram reduced? That's because I'm clipping the black point of the histogram. There's a way of using GHS to avoid any clipping. It simply won't let you clip it. And what you do is you go to GHS, Generalized Hyperbolic Stretch. You pull up the histogram. Now, what you're going to do, you're going to set the symmetry point. Here's the width of the histogram. You're going to set the symmetry point to somewhere before the histogram comes off the x-axis. I'm going to pick there. I could pick anywhere, but that point is where I'm going to pick. With the adjustments I'm going to do, what it will do is it will only shift this down until this point hits the left side of the histogram. It won't go any further. And if you try, it will compress this data but not truncate it, so you will not clip. So what you do, you send that to the symmetry point, then you take this highlight protection slider and you slide it all the way down until it hits the symmetry point. It won't go below the symmetry point, and the shadow protection, by the way, won't go above the symmetry point. But with that done, now when I do this stretch, watch what happens to the histogram. You notice it's moving down. I'm adjusting the black point. And I'm going to continue to slide it down. And there, it won't go, even though it looks like it disappeared. You notice the preview is not changing? It will not clip. It won't slide down any further than when this touches the edge here. So it's a really nice tool for setting the black point. You can't clip your image. Now, what we want to do here, of course, is to just click that and then slide it ever so slightly just to get the contrast where we want. Probably somewhere around there, I'm thinking. So now my black point is set and I have not clipped. then we'll reset that. Now you can set the white point with the histogram tool. The nice part about setting it with the nice part about using the histogram tool is it's very easy. You just grab one slider. You can also use GHS with no problem. I generally try and use the histogram tool for it just because I'm more familiar with using it to set the white point. Histogram tool. Okay, we'll reset that. It's N, so we'll do that. So now we're looking at what the histogram tool is going to do, and I'm just going to dial the white point up a little bit. So there is our stretched nebula image, and you can see it doesn't look too bad. So there's the nebula. And again, you can play around. You can make it brighter or darker, whatever you want. You can make it more colorful, but you will notice.
Can I quickly
What's
ask
that?
on the histogram, if you take the black triangle on the bottom left of the histogram and shift that right to darken the background, is that
You will darken the
reasonable option?
background. Yeah, but you run the risk of clipping some areas of the background. So I generally, that's why I use GHS for that.
Okay.
If you use the adjustments I showed you in GHS, you will not clip the black point, no matter what you do.
Okay.
So now we want to take a look at the star image. So what we want to do now, we want to make these stars. You have to remember there's a screen stretch applied to this, so it looks pretty crappy. We want to make these stars bright, but we want color in them, and I personally don't like that many stars in an image, so we don't want that many. So let's turn off the screen stretch first off, and we'll go back to GHS, my favorite stretch tool, as you can see. Now, we'll reset everything. We're going to go to color mode, and I'm not going to set a symmetry point. The symmetry point is 0 for the stars. And we'll go to here. Now, as I start stretching, you will start to see the stars come in, as you can see. And you can dial up as many as you want. You can have, a whole lot of stars. Once this catches up, there we go, a whole lot of stars. Yeah, I know it's yucky that way. You can have fewer stars once it catches up. There we go. And you can set how many stars you want by changing how much of a stretch you apply to the stars. The nice part about this split star process is I can control the stars independently of the nebula. So let's just say that that's the right number of stars. It may not be. But now what we want to do, we want to get a little more color in the stars. And there's a trick here that comes in handy. I'm going to zoom in this area. You can see we have some color in the stars. By changing the local intensity, I can get more or less color. By sliding this to the right, I will get a little more color in my stars. I do not want to go too far. The reason I don't want to go too far is eventually the stars start to look funny, because what's happening is by sliding this to the right, you're increasing the stretch in the dim areas of the star. So the stellar halo becomes exaggerated. So for instance, if I do this, and now we zoom in on this particular star, you see what I mean? You got a bright core, and all the dim areas here are stretched, and it looks a little crappy. There's a way to get around that, but the easiest way is just don't slide that too far. So there, now we got some color. Oops, wrong way. Now we got some color in all of the stars, and the halo's not too bad. So we'll start with that. The next thing we want to do, though, is, once this gets back, there's a lot of very faint small stars here that I may not want at that level in my image. because it may begin to overwhelm the nebula. We want them in the image, just maybe not quite that bright. So we'll zoom in and have a look. So you can see all the faint little stars that are now really bright. You can tame those by adjusting the symmetry point. So if I increase the symmetry point, remember right now it's 0. If I dial it up a little bit, it will have the effect of, once it catches up, reducing some of those dim stars. Did you see that effect?
Yeah.
And you can dial that up and down as much as you want. I'm just going to clear that and go here a minute just to get a little more sense, a little more capability to slide. So now if you watch here, you see what happened?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so obviously that's too much. That's not too bad as opposed to that.
Yeah.
Right? So you can control, just by moving the symmetry point, how bright you make those dim stars. Looks like we want to have that about there. That doesn't look too bad. So you can play with that a bit. Again, it's done to taste. If you like nice big white stars, go for it. If you like small colorful stars, you can get that effect too, just by playing with the stretch on the stars. Now, next thing we're going to do, we're going to apply that to the stars. And then I'm going to reset it, and I'm going to go and stretch the saturation a bit. I may not have enough stars in that image. We'll soon see. It may look a little unnatural because I don't have enough, but we'll soon see. Now we'll just dial up the saturation a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. Now we got some star color in there. And then we'll close that. Now what we're going to do is we are now going to combine this image, which is the stars. So I'm going to change its identifier to S, just because I don't like typing long names, no other reason. And we're going to combine it with, once this gets down here, with the nebula. So here's the nebula here. And we're going to use pixel math to do that. There are any number of pixel math expressions that will do what we want. The one I tend to start off with is S plus N, but that tends to be too abrupt. So then what I do is I subtract S times N. So this adds the stars to the nebula, but it subtracts the stars times the nebula. Now I want you to remember that in PixInsight, a maximum brightness is 1, and all other values are less than 1. So this multiplication produces a number that is smaller than this addition. And I can play with how much of the stars I put in by just multiplying here by some constant. I'm going to pick 1 for the moment. And let's just see what that looks like. There is our image. That's not too bad. Again, like I said, if you like brighter stars, more and more of them, you can just change the stretch on the stars. But if you look now, zoomed in too much, we've got all sorts of detail, and that noise is pretty much under control, as you can see.
Good.
From there, you go ahead.
I was just saying, looking good now.
Yeah, not too bad. So now from there, we would do a couple of final steps. I usually make one more pass at, where is it? Convolution. At an unsharp mask. And the purpose for this is just to brighten the stars up a little bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to clear that and take a look at it. And just with the default settings, let's see what it does. Not a lot. And I'm probably doing some strange things to this. Yeah, you notice some of the ringing around the stars
Rings,
now?
yeah.
Yeah, now you can fix that with deringing. I just want to see if it's making the stars any. No, it's not worth doing. Okay. So there we are. There we have it. We now have an image. Whoops, that wasn't what I want. There it is. Okay, so we now have an image. We have color in the stars. You'll notice these are bright white. We have a bunch of red stars throughout the nebula, some redder than others. And in the processing, we can control how much of the nebula shows up, how sharp we make it, how much noise we take down, and we can control the stars. If we had tried to do any of that noise reduction with the stars in the image, it would have blurred the stars. So we didn't want to do that, but since they weren't in the image, they don't get blurred. You put them back in after you're done. Any questions?
Well, I'll ask
Certainly
one
is.
then, because
Yeah. Yeah.
you haven't touched arcsine at all, which is, was my favorite stretch in Images Plus.
Yes.
And I I also use GHS, whatever it is, but I'm not as sophisticated as you. You showed me a bunch of stuff, but I generally my first stretch is a light arcsine H stretch because I think that gives color to my stars.
There is no problem doing that. GHS, however, will give you lots of color in the stars.
Yeah,
The catch is to use color mode in
yeah,
your
I've not
stretch.
seen that before. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, I'll just quickly show you this here. If you pull up GHS, the problem with Pix Insight's version of
Arcsine.
ArcSine
Yeah.
is it's not particularly flexible. You can see you
No.
have a stretch factor and a black point.
Yeah.
Yuck. However, if you're determined to use ArcSine, use this tool and
Okay.
move to ArcSine instead of GHS. And now you've got stretch factor, symmetry point, you can
Okay.
protect the light, shadows, everything. You can stretch different modes, you can use color again. By the
Okay.
way, using color is similar with this slider right here to Images Plus color decompression.
Okay.
All right, so you can do that in either the ArcSine under GHS or a full GHS stretch.
Okay.
Either one works. If you read through the help file, which I think is that one, the documentation, ArcSine is a subset of the GHS stretch.
Okay.
Basically, what happens is one of the, I got to remember now the math. One of the values in the expression goes to 1 or 0, I forget which, and it becomes an ArcSine stretch.
Okay.
So it's an extremely flexible tool. You can do an ArcSine stretch. I would caution you against stretching the image before you separate out the stars. The reason being, if you stretch it beforehand, you cannot make them any smaller should you want to. Whereas
Right.
if you stretch them after you've taken them out of the image, you have complete control over the size of the star, including
Cool.
making them too small, which I often do. You can make them as big as you want, obviously, without any problem. But you can see the effect. You end up with a nice image. It's
Yeah.
got quiet background. It's got reasonable detail through the wall, and you have colorful stars. Now, most of the stars in this image are a pale red. That's not a function of the process. That's most of the stars in the image are actually a pale red. Any other questions?
Just a comment, Blair. I went through it 3 times in order to get something to submit. And the major difference was and you didn't even use it, which was curves.
Yep, you can certainly use curves. I tend
I
to
don't think I
use
want to anymore.
I do tend to use curves. I use curves mostly for fine tuning areas of an image. I will, for instance, if I want to play with the set, if I had this image in front of me just as it is, you know, this is actually pretty good, but you may
Yeah,
want to do things to this image as a whole. So you could use curves, for example, to, one sec, up the saturation just a little bit
yeah,
more. So you
yeah.
sort of click here and say, well, okay, there, that area. Let's take the saturation up a little bit there. And so you can see the effect, right?
You see the difference. Yeah.
Right. Uh,
Well, I ended up with a lot of masks, and
there's
because
absolutely nothing wrong with, I like masks personally. Um, it
not that
tends to
many.
be frowned upon in PixInsight, and I
Yep.
think that's to the detriment of users. Um, it's absolutely correct that you don't want to do some of that stuff if you're doing scientific image processing, which I also do. But if you're out to make a pretty picture, do what you want. You know,
Make it pretty.
if you want that nebula to look to be purple, make it purple. Um, you know, I'm not going to tell anyone that you know, blurring the background and making this really sharp is a bad thing. I don't like that look. Some people do, but that's up to the person doing the image processing. That is why I tend to tell people don't worry too much about the settings in any of my tutorials because they don't matter. It's the workflow that matters. The settings are really to your taste. If you want the image to be really colorful, jack up the saturation more. If the saturation clips and you like that, sure. If you don't like that, I don't, by the way, then don't clip it. But that's entirely up to you doing your processing. And as you can see, one thing I did in this image, and I'll show it to everyone here, I would have fixed this earlier. You notice these two stars
Yeah.
right here at the top. You notice that black area?
Yeah.
That is in the data, but it is not real. It is an artifact. And you can fix that in the processing that we're doing before you recombine the stars with the nebula image. Just clone that little dark spot out and that'll go away. The other thing that some people will notice is some of the stars may be too sharp for your liking. Like the transition on this guy from the nebula to the star is quite abrupt. You can fix that by, one second, I'm just going to close that window. You can fix that by simply applying a very slight blur to the star layer before you add it. So if we look at, I think that was this star. Oops, wrong way. Yeah, that was that star. So if we blur that out to soften it up just a little bit, we're not talking a lot of blur here. We don't want to make the stars fuzzy. You just select a convolution and okay, now we'll zoom in on a star in the image. Might as well be the one we were just looking at right here. So if we turn off the convolution, turn it back on, you'll notice some of the fainter stars get really faint. You may not want to lose that much, so you just turn down the convolution a little bit. There we go. And now you'll notice that that star, I keep pointing with my finger to the screen, which does no good. You'll notice that these stars are quite abrupt, and then if I turn the convolution back on, now they're not quite as abrupt.
Yeah.
So I can apply that to the star image. Get rid of the preview. Go back and do that pixel math again. And add them. And now we'll go look at that star here again. and you'll notice it's nowhere near as abrupt,
Yeah.
right? So you can tailor that however you want. If you like abrupt stars, you can make them that. I do tend to apply a very slight blur before I add my stars back in. But you have complete control. Now you'll notice the other thing, that using GHS in a way that we made sure we didn't clip anything, you'll notice this little nebula here still has detail in it,
Yeah.
right? A lot of times that just washes right out. GHS is really good at hanging on to that detail, but it's better at doing it when you remove the stars, because to make that nebula bright and keep that detail, chances are a lot of the stars would be big and bloated, whereas you can avoid doing that this way. So that's pretty much my split star process. I'll just close a few things down here. The things to take away that I think, Derek, you were quite curious about was how I got rid of that median scale noise.
Yeah.
And the way I did that was using the linear transform and finding out which layers most of that noise was on, and then applying
Yeah.
noise reduction just to those layers.
That was excellent. Yeah, that was brilliant.
And
Another question there.
yeah,
If you wanted to say the fainter nebulosity, which was outside that mask you drew, if you wanted to make that a
Yeah.
slightly different color, say slightly bluer, just to have, it's not the natural state of the image, but just have a little bit more contrast. So
you could obviously mask out this area to leave it red. And there is a very nice tool in PixInsight. It's a tool you have to install. It is free. And it is called, where is it? Narrowband normalization.
Yeah.
So now I can play with this data. And let's see, mode 2, I think, is the one I want. You mean things like that?
yeah, okay.
And you can play with the amount
Mask out the
blend.
red, the main part of the wall.
Yeah, there's no mask applied at all in this yet. You certainly could apply a mask, and I would, but you can see that I can play now just by selecting an HOO palette,
Okay.
and it will do all the blending for me. I can make that look pretty much any way I want.
Nice.
You can even select SHO. You get the idea. Now I can come down here and apply some O3 boost, which is going to boost the blue, if I remember right. There you go.
Yep.
Right, so you can do all that sort of stuff within this narrowband normalization tool. And again, it's a freebie. You just download it. For those that aren't familiar with how to download things, you have to find the web resource for the repository. Then you just come in under, where did it go? Under Updates, Manage Repositories, and add the repository you want, and then just click Update and it'll add it in for you. And there are lots of really nice tools available out there that make PixInsight much more, let's say, user-friendly. Things like those mask generation tools that I showed you from SETI Astra, they're just awesome. They go against the grain of against PixInsight's sort of core values, if you would. But I'm sorry, I make pretty pictures. I also do scientific imaging, and then I won't do things like I'm doing here. But to make a nice, pretty picture, you do what you want is what it amounts to.
Okay, I've moved from 90% convinced to 99% convinced to get PixInsight.
Yeah. Now, having said that, you can do most of what we just discussed with Images Plus as well. You do it differently, of course, different tool set, but it will give you very similar results. Not quite as good because it doesn't support the plugins from RC Astro.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize enough how much of a change Blur Exterminator and Noise Exterminator have made in image processing in the last 2, 3 years.
Yeah. I only moved over to PixInsight about a year ago, Blair. I wouldn't do it for lots of the reasons that you sort of hinted at, and I was still using Images Plus, but I got increasingly frustrated that there are tools out there that I have seen people use. That obviously Mike is 10 years out of the product now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Getting that way. So last year, after I'd had some surgery, had a hip replaced, I thought, yeah, I'm sat at home. I got PixInsight, so I'm still fairly new at it. But yeah, those additional plugins are brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, effectively, those plugins have made up for the missing functions. Missing's not the right word.
Yeah,
Difficult to use functions in PixInsight. I mean,
yeah,
PixInsight has deconvolution.
yeah,
Quite blunt about it. As you said, Mike's package is, what, 10 years old now?
yeah. It's got to be getting on for 10 years since he stopped.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And to tell you the truth, the deconvolution in Images Plus still beats the deconvolution in PixInsight. It's
yeah,
easier to use, it produces better results, and it runs faster.
yeah,
But it's nowhere near as good as RC Astro's AI-based
Sure.
deconvolution blur
yeah,
exterminator. So
yeah,
it is a credit to Mike. He wrote a wonderful package,
yeah.
and we're 10 years on now since he stopped supporting it, and it's just now getting long in the tooth.
I still point people at it when people say, "Oh, is there something out there that's free that does it?" I said, Just download Images Plus. But
Absolutely.
forget about the camera control part because unless you got really old cameras, it doesn't. It's useless. But
Exactly.
the package is still good, and I still use it for some stuff. Yeah,
Yep. And like I said, I use it for whenever I want edge masks. So, for example, if I wanted to sharpen up all the edges in this nebula,
yeah,
I would use the edge mask in Images Plus. I could go in and make my own kernel. Signal processing was my day job.
yeah,
So I could go in and make my own kernel to do the same thing in PixInsight. It's just a pain in the butt to do it. So I can just go into Images Plus, move a few sliders, and get the effect I want.
yeah, yeah. The thing that I struggled with, I mean, you and I talked several times, and you got me reasonably comfortable with his, I can't remember what it's called now, but that his star removal tool,
Oh yeah.
which was, very difficult to build the right size. And you still had lots of cleaning up to do. And then Star
Yes.
Exterminator, or the one that you've used, which I
Yep.
used a little bit as well,
I generally what I started doing, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you wanted to remove the stars almost completely from the image, I would use Star Exterminator or
Yeah,
StarNet plus
yeah,
plus under Images Plus. Where Mike's tool came in handy is if you just wanted to remove most of the stars so that you could do noise reduction and not damage them, it was
yeah,
really quick.
yeah,
So, it had its pros and cons. It was a very early implementation of star removal, but it did work.
yeah,
Yeah. And the thing I like about PixInsight is, to the credit of the authors, they made it extensible.
yeah,
So people can write scripts, they can write processes, should they be so inclined and talented, and they can be added to PixInsight. So if you go over and you look at the SETI Astro tools here, there's a halo reducer for stars that works really well.
okay,
It will shrink stars. It's not quite as good as that one in Images Plus, which is just awesome, and I still
yeah,
use, but it does work.
yeah,
You can merge multiple masks together.
That's that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
you can draw masks, as we've just looked at. There's something called a blemish blaster, for if you've got a spot in your image and you wanted to remove it, and you
Yeah.
didn't use the clone tool, that one works quite well. They're well worth downloading, and they are free. The folks at SETI Astro do a good job. Their
Yeah.
automatic DBE works very well. I know Bob
Good one.
uses it a lot. I tend to use it a lot as well. It just does a good job, and there's a lot of them. And credit to the authors of PixInsight, they allowed the package to be extensible that way, and it's
Yeah, although they have shut down some.
a little bit.
Yeah. There's some things that were there have gone now, because they were seen as competitor products or something, I
Competitors.
think.
Yeah.
Well, I won't fault them for trying to prevent their competition from hijacking the
Okay.
platform. But to their credit, they have allowed packages to
Yeah.
be added in.
Yeah.
And that means that other people who are writing these things that do it as a labor of love, not as a money-making
Yeah.
effort, can write things that the community finds useful. And I find that is one thing I really like about PixInsight is they have made
Yeah.
it extensible.
Yeah.
I
That's
won't.
it's a good tool. Yeah.
It is, I'll gripe about the user interface. I'm sorry, I'm a Windows person, so I like the Windows interface. But
Oh,
that's just personal preference more than anything. Okay, I hope that answers some of the questions on how to process this, how I processed, I should say,
Yeah.
this particular challenge image, and how I got that noise in the background RA curtain here down, or HA curtain rather, down quite a bit. It also kept, you'll notice, some of the O3 data, some of this blue data here,
Yeah.
and that's a function of GHS.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful stretch tool, and Dave is to be definitely thanked for coming up with the idea of using a generalized hyperbolic expression for stretching, and having the patience to chase someone to get them to code it, and it's turned out to be a very nice package.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Blair. I'm glad I continued to shadow the group, even though I stopped processing anything many years ago. But I still followed it, and then I saw you'd started using PixInsight. So when I saw there was an offer for this tutorial, I was thinking, yeah, because I mean, there's so many takeaways just from this, hour and a half or whatever it's been.
Well, I hope it's been useful for people, and we will probably be able to do a few of these in the future. As I had said, I'm retired now, so I have time to do them.
Yeah, congrats on your retirement.
Just one comment, Blair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I use StarNet in Cyril, and I normally select the generate star mask option, and I don't think that's monochrome. Well, I use it as my star image.
I will have to take a look at that. I assumed it was still monochrome. It used to be
They
in one of
call it
the
a star
earlier
mask.
versions.
I just use it as my star's image, and I stretch it with
I
pH,
will-
and I get colors out.
I appreciate that information. I will have to go take a look. It will
I
save
should
me
have
one more
imagined
step
it's
in
the
image
same in
processing.
PixInsight because it's the same program, just enabled.
I would assume so. Earlier version of StarNet Plus Plus, I believe that was literally just a mask. It was monochrome, and I haven't looked at it.
Maybe
since.
they've changed it, but they haven't corrected the name.
I like that. That will save me one step. I won't have to do the subtraction. I'll take a look. Thanks for the info. Okay, and about the only other thing with this image, I haven't cropped it. So, there are some stacking artifacts down here that you can see. And we would want to, before we combine the stars, we'd want to clone this little dark spot out up here. But other than that, it's pretty much there.
So I normally crop mine before I run Graxpert because I found that Graxpert can throw a wobbly if there's too much, dead around the edges.
Yeah, and they actually tell you to do that in the manual.
Okay, all right.
They do say that Graxpert requires that you crop the image. It's small enough here that it didn't cause Graxpert any grief. Yeah, no, absolutely. If you if I had a big stacking artifact on the side here from Dither, and one of the nice things about Pix Insight is it will auto crop and remove most of that.
Yeah.
But if it didn't get it all, you would want to go in and crop it out before you basically before you do anything. I mean, why waste the processing time required to do that little bit on the side of your image when it isn't necessary?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
gentlemen. I hope that has been useful.
Very.
And like I said, in the future, we might be able to do a few more of these.
Thanks very much for
Thank
your
you
time.
again, Blair.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Do you want
Okay,
the
I'll stop.
attendance? You want the attendance list, well, the list of attendees or not?
No, we'll send it out. We'll just send the note out to the group
Okay.
because there will be, people that may or may not be interested, and then they can go look.
All right. I'll do the upload and I'll send you the link.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Have a good vacation.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Good night.
Cheers.
Bye.